promoting mindful well-being in everyday life. This is the Pragmatic Alchemy Podcast with your host, Courtney Edwards.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Pragmatic Alchemy Podcast. I am your host, Courtney Edwards, and today we are in the presence of one of my, at least from a podcast guest perspective, I think probably one of my longest standing friendships. We are welcoming Amanda Schwarz to the show today, and Amanda and I met in college, so it was a minute ago. And we've just spent a little bit of time reminiscing, and it always makes my heart very happy to still be connected and still be in contact. And just to see the way that this relationship has changed. And I'm sure a little bit of this will come up in our conversation, but we met as college DJs at our college radio station in Oneonta. But more recently, I feel like we've connected in an even more meaningful way. Amanda's been really instrumental in my development as an entrepreneur. She is, at least in part, responsible for this being the Pragmatic Alchemy Podcast, because when I wanted to rebrand my primary business, my coaching practice, from Solavi Holistic to Alchemy Behavioral Health Coaching, Amanda was the one that I called and said, I have this idea. I want to do this thing. It feels terrifying. And I took a walk on my road and we talked it through. And by the end of that conversation, I felt really confident about the direction I was going to take this in. And so I am delighted to be able to share some of the wisdom with you that Amanda has shared with me, because she's been a huge support and mentor to me. She's also been a tea mentor, and hopefully we'll talk about that a little bit too, because Amanda and I were involved in a business coaching relationship a couple of years ago, and simultaneously I had decided I wanted to give up coffee. And Amanda is a tea aficionado and a former tea professional, if I'm remembering correctly.
That is correct.
That is correct, right? And so Amanda tutored me both from a business coaching perspective as well as a tea exploration perspective. And I think I've had maybe 3 cups of coffee in the last 2 years. So, so Amanda, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. That was a lovely introduction, and I really appreciate that. It's very super kind. Thank you.
Well, you are a lovely human, and every single word of it was true. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about you? I said a whole bunch of things, didn't actually say what it is you do for a living. So I don't know if you want to start there, or if there's other parts of your identity you want to speak to, but why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, Courtney, there's just so many. I am just an onion. I am just an onion.
That's maybe what I love most about you.
I appreciate that. So let's see. My name is Amanda Schwarz. I am, it's strange with women. How, we start this conversation. I guess first and foremost, I see myself as a creative being.
Okay.
And that's taken a lot to say, imposter syndrome, yada, yada, yada. I'm sure your listening audience is well versed.
Just to put a pin in that, our listening audience is us. It's like 95% identified as female, and the age range is like 35 to 60. So
my heart is warmed.
We are talking to us.
My people, hello.
Yes.
I see myself as a creative person, and I wanted to do my best to express myself in this way because it's the only way that I feel whole and real. So I left your kind of normal 9 to 5 about 5 years ago, I suppose. Actually longer, probably 6 or 7 years ago. And I decided that I would take all of the experience that I had in digital marketing and advertising for myself. And so I started my own freelance company. It's called Mended Digital. I build websites for people. I help them with their marketing, their writing, their images, all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of a one-stop shop. Many, many years ago, a woman I worked with called me a factotum. And
I do not know that word, and I love language.
All right. So factotum is kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none.
Okay. Oh, I
But
feel that. I feel
but
that.
she meant it in a way that was a little more derogatory, I
Oh, yeah. I
suppose.
don't
Yeah.
I don't feel that. No.
Yes. So
That's no bueno.
it was kind of a disposable kind of. She had her own issues.
Okay. All right.
But I kind of took that to heart and said, well, I may not necessarily wildly specialize in one thing, but I can do everything well enough
Mhm.
and good enough that, small to medium sized business owners can rely on me for consistent branding,
Mhm.
for a solid web presence, for making sure calls to action are where they need to be. All of those kind of things, taking difficult concepts and making them more understandable to
Mhm.
people. So, a lot of times I'll be working for businesses that have components to them that are a little more abstract. And so I'll be able to help translate. And that's really, when it comes down to it, what my clients really love about me is my ability to translate what they do in real life onto a web presence so that people know what they're doing, what they're up to. So I take a lot of pride in that work. I really enjoy it. My clientele is, we've got, people who coach with horses. I've worked with um, small startups across the ocean that are trying to make headway in the States. Everybody in between. I love working with life coaches. I love working with authors. So again, other people who are taking more creative, fluid trips around this planet, so to
Mhm.
speak.
Mhm.
So that really feeds my heart and my soul. I am I have, how do I, how do you even say, I'm married with two
Mhm.
kids. My
Okay.
family is very important to me. So that's an important aspect of who I am. I'm a writer. I do write on the side. It's a lot of stuff I'm kind of pulling together for myself. I don't know how that's going to express itself,
Mhm.
but I think that the whole idea of podcasting and launching a podcast, which is um, well, a lot of what we're talking about. Edit. Sorry about the stammering.
No, that's okay. I'm not gonna
Okay.
edit a thing. Yeah. No.
Damn it. A lot
We
of what a
stammer
pod.
here. We stammer here, and we embrace our stammering because it's real and it's
Well,
human.
well, I am definitely more grounded than I thought I was going to be going in. So I
You're
am going
doing a
to
beautiful job.
keep going. So Courtney and I, well, the reason why I'm on the podcast right now, I believe, is because I asked Courtney to be on mine.
Mhm.
And what I like about the idea of podcasting in general is that you ship as I mean, so Seth Godin is the author I'm referring to, and he talks about you can, doing and doing and doing and having it in your head and having it on your computer, but not putting it out there. And I
Mhm.
think that the podcasting was a natural extension of my writing and my interest of writing. Um, so I have the background in radio, thought I'd interview people, and then I'm working on short pieces for the top and the bottom of the piece.
Mhm.
That will be my writing, will be my thoughts, and kind of sandwiched together into this podcast, which I am calling. What am I calling it? My God. Like I said,
Is it
audacity. It is.
No,
I
I
am
think
audacious. It's aspirations and what become of them.
okay.
Right. So the podcast itself is called Aspirations and What Become of Them. And my first season is basically, I didn't become a radio DJ.
Mhm.
And the idea is that I wanted to interview people who either went to college and were on a radio station or at one point were on radio, and then what exactly happened. For me, I had hoped to be on radio. That was a goal of mine. I interned at a radio station the year after I left college because I didn't have the opportunity to intern at that point while I was in school. And I realized very quickly that the industry was dying, or at least
Mm.
terrestrial radio as an industry was no longer going to be what I thought it was going to be.
Mhm.
So I'm like, all right, so what next? Not knowing that anything was going to be able to present itself that was going to be anything quite like that.
Right.
So I'm interested in talking to people who may have had that same aspiration, and the chances of them being in college radio are pretty high. Or to take another angle, I think we talk a lot about what are you going to major in college?
Mhm.
What's in, like, after high school, what do you do next? And this broader conversation of whether college is actually necessary, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And all of these ideas, all of these big choices that you believe that you are making in your late teens to early 20s. And
Which
here
is
I am. Right, right. So here I am sitting in Ohio, of all places. I did not expect to be living in Ohio. I know nobody here. I don't have family here. So I'm sitting in Ohio having a imaginary conversation with a human being who was dropped off at college at what? 16, 17 years old, saying, "Hey, you're going to choose this major and you're going to do this thing and you're going to have this experience and you think that this is a big setup for this thing.
Mhm.
Guess what happens next?"
Yeah.
And and coming out of the pandemic, where I think a lot of us were thinking about who we are and what we are, because we had a lot of time to sit with ourselves,
Mhm.
right? We weren't going into work, we were staying put and thinking about the value of our life and what's important to us right now.
Yeah.
I think that this is a time to take that self-evaluation and shift it into celebration, and to celebrate the people we've become and the humans that we are, regardless of what that path was.
Mhm.
So just because I was a philosophy and speech comm dual major, just because I am not on the radio doesn't mean that my trip was not valid. It doesn't mean that all the steps along the way weren't valid. And I am not a failure. And
Mhm.
I think that there's still a population out there that is looking at their lives and saying, well, I didn't become fill in the blank. And it's like, well,
Right.
so what are you going to do next? You can feel the feels, and I think that's important, but I think it's a good place to start is to celebrate where you actually are.
Mhm.
And then if you wanna take next steps, for me, I'm like, "Hey, an interesting next step is possibly podcasting.
Right.
Let me
Right.
give that a shot." And you know what? If it doesn't work out, I've had plenty of other things that didn't work out. What does working out even mean? Does it even matter?
Right.
So, let's just go for it. And
Right.
also on the side, I sing with a chorus in Cincinnati, so that's another thing I'm very excited about. I'm a year into a stint with the Cincinnati May Festival. They perform at Music Hall, and they are with the Cincinnati Symphony and the Pops, and it's very exciting. So that's
Love
another
all of that.
element of what I've been up to. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
bittersweet, there it is, and now a sip of tea. Mm.
I wanna just I wanna dive into all of it because everything you said, I'm, like, applauding over here. Um, I don't even know where to start.
I'm sorry,
It
too
was
much.
so much, it was so much, it was all so good. But I think about it, I mean, one of the things that towards the end of what you were just saying really popped into my mind, and I've spoken about this, I think specifically with you before, it's just, like, looking back at the bad jobs, quote unquote bad jobs I had over my 20-year career before launching into my own business, and thinking about the skill set that I drew from those experiences, even though
Mhm.
in the moment it wasn't a good fit and I was unhappy and feeling very miserable about where my career was. An example being I had done graduate level admissions for a while, and it just wasn't what I wanted to be doing. It didn't have enough of the counseling piece. But one of the tasks that I was assigned in that role was to work with the marketing department to rebrand all the print material, the website, and the outreach pieces for the graduate programs. And the reason I believe I've spoken to you about this is it's because it was the reason I knew even one thing about putting together a brand when I
Mm.
launched my business, and to be able to look back on that and make some meaning from an experience that in the moment felt really bad. I just remember wanting to quit that job every day
Mhm.
because it wasn't what I wanted to do. And then being able to look back and be like, yeah, I mean, it was definitely not a failure because it built a skill that I'm now utilizing every single day in being able to get this project up off the ground and have something that, works in this social media oriented world that we are stuck in kind of. It feels stuck
I,
a little. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're right. I mean, how do you even escape the social media world at this point? I mean,
Right. Right.
I know people who, delightful Luddites who have eluded it for a long period of time, but I feel badly because sometimes they miss out on things, and it's all so
Yeah.
integrated right now. And I'm not saying you miss out on things, like nobody's missing out on certain meta things that are popping up on the internet. But I think missing on events or missing
Right.
real life interactions because calendars are on social media platforms is
Right.
rotten for
Right.
sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I've
Well, and
always been
even just like now from a business perspective, like I feel like
oh,
even if I wanted to quit social media in
mm.
my personal life, I'm still going to have it because it's one of the, most accessible ways for me to be an entrepreneur.
And what's really interesting about that too is social media is really best. And there's a lot of talk right now about being authentic and authenticity, right?
Mhm.
And I think about this a lot. Where is the line between being authentic and sharing too much?
I don't
Right?
know because I cross that line all the time.
So I want people to know who I am and to experience me as a human
Right.
being. And, all the social media outlets, like, you've got to share who you are. You've got to let people know who you are. And I think that there's a line, at least for me, in terms of comfort. I have enough in my life that not everybody needs to know
Right.
all of the things.
Mhm.
But creating brand that appears to be authentic has to
Mhm.
come from a root of some sort of authenticity.
Mhm.
But you don't necessarily want to share. I mean, in my humble, I don't need to know about everybody's dogs all the time.
Excuse me.
As much as
You
not
need
everybody,
you need to know about Jenny though.
fair, but not everybody needs to know about my children all the time.
Right, right,
Right?
right. No, I get
And
what you're saying.
but that's what feeds the algorithm. These are the things that feed the machine. And if you want your stuff to be seen on social media, there's a certain amount of personal that needs to be added as well. And I think you do a beautiful job of balancing it, if I may say, with your marketing.
Well,
Um,
thanks.
when I saw your logo for the first time, I'm like, wait a minute. Like, are you hiring? Are you hiring? So you nailed it. You just
Yeah.
nailed it. And that's what I hope to achieve with my clients.
Mhm, mhm.
And I will say straight out, Courtney you did all your own stuff. I am not responsible for the look and feel of any of Courtney's marketing. That is all Courtney. That is the creative goddess inside of her. But I
I love
love the
that.
look on your face. We're just throwing it out there. That's your creative goddess, girl.
I love
So
having a creative goddess.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yay.
So, but I mean, that's what I want to help people achieve with
Right.
their sites, right? That's so that we share something that might feel a little more personal and intimate without sharing things that are personal and intimate.
Right.
Mhm.
Mhm. Well
So
said. Well
just trying to
said.
get those feels out. So yeah,
Yeah.
those feels.
So, in terms of your podcast, I love the topic aspirations and what becomes of them because I personally have had a very roundabout, very circuitous, lots of, you know, checking out different avenues, different lanes. I've wanted to be all of the things.
Yep.
I was just joking with somebody recently that I think part of what fuels my belief in reincarnation as a spiritual belief is the fact that it also means that I can maybe do some of these things I didn't get to in this life in the next one. So I'm like, I really wish I'd become an English teacher or a librarian. And so sometimes when that comes up for me, I'm like, next time. I'll do that next time.
Have you
Uh,
have you ever heard the term multi-potentialite?
no, but I love it.
I really should look up the person who coined this phrase, and I just because I like to give credit where credit is due.
I should play the
LTIPOTENTIALATE.
Jeopardy music right now. Do, do,
I am a
do. There we go.
tragic speller, as anyone who knows me well. So yes, so the person who coined this, I think it's puttylike.com. Um, Anyway, they talked, let's see, a multipotentialite is someone with many interesting creative pursuits.
Yes.
And the term was popularized by Emily Wapnick. and it's called Putty Like, and it's a 2015 TED Talk, because everything's got
Oh,
a TED Talk. But
everything. I want a TED Talk. That's my next goal. I want a TED Talk. I feel like I have a lot of shit to say.
So anyway, it's this whole idea that there are people out there who are capable of doing many different things.
Right.
And don't think that people who have these abilities are celebrated in our culture,
Mm,
because you have to be good at one thing. And so
right.
you can even see it with celebrity, right? And I'm not saying that celebrities are, spectacular or whatever. I think celebrities are people. But
Mhm.
when you have an actor who decides to sing,
Mhm.
they may very well be good at acting and singing. But the press will come down on them like a mass of hawks, right?
Right.
Just although hawks actually fight alone, but whatever. Vultures. There we go, vultures. Hey, So um, I'm ridiculous.
Sorry. Now I've got the
So,
giggles.
but I think that kind of plants something in the back of our heads,
Right.
right? It plants something in the back of your head that, you go to school and you study the thing and you
Mhm.
do the thing because this is the thing you are going to do. And if you don't get your 10,000 hours, thank you, Gladwell. If you don't
Uh-huh.
get your
Uh-huh.
10,000 hours and become very good at this specific thing, you are not going to be good for anything. So,
Right.
those of us who have had those roundabout career paths,
Mhm.
and like, well, I don't know what to make of this resume. This is what you make of this resume. I was at this school. I had to do marketing for them. I picked up marketing skills.
Right.
Like these are, and then let's celebrate those roundabout paths. We have a culture where we don't know what to do with ourselves because many of our parents have had jobs that they were doing for 20, 30, 40 years.
Yes.
And they have these compensation packages and they have pensions. And that's not what a lot of us Gen Xers are going to be experiencing.
Right.
So
So why sell your soul for 35 years when you're not going to get much more than a fancy pen, maybe a watch?
maybe,
Maybe.
but that's what we've been told we're supposed to do.
Right, exactly.
So I think these roundabout career paths are just so fascinating. And when people tell me, and I have a couple of those career paths on my podcast, which is, I'm excited to share about.
Mhm.
But when
Mhm.
people decide to take a different path and do different things, that maybe this isn't as odd as what we think it is, but maybe it's more
Right.
common than we think.
Right.
And maybe we should talk about that, and that, you're okay.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
it's awesome, actually. It's not just okay. Like, it's an
Yeah.
awesome thing. It's an awesome path to pursue. It's living.
I've had to make peace with it because I not, yes to all of the kind of societal influences that you were talking about, but at a earlier point in my life, I had very close voices to me telling me
Mm.
that I should be picking a lane and sticking with it, and
Mhm.
so that really contributed to the internalization of I'm not doing it right. And now I do feel like I've hit a place of full celebration. And I think one of the things I love about having my own business now is when those impulses to turn a corner, which I think are inherent to my Aquarian nature, when they arise, I don't have to fight them off anymore. It's just like, okay, now this is going to be a new offering. This is going to be a new facet to this enterprise, shall I call it, that I'm
Mhm.
building. And so when I get that urge to be like, oh, I should have been an English teacher or a librarian, it's like, well, okay, so maybe now I establish a book club
Hmm.
and I bring people together and we talk about books related to our personal development or our spiritual growth or or just I don't know, trashy fiction, who the fuck cares, like but there's the point being that I can create whatever avenue I now feel like I need to meet that I don't know, that wayfarer part of my soul that just is not ever gonna settle into one track. Like, 'cause
Mhm.
I just don't think I am. I often refer to Sylvia Plath and the figs that she writes about in the bell jar. Like, I
Mhm.
feel that. Like, I'm like, all the figs look delicious. I want to do them all. I want to be all of the things. And I feel like this gives me a chance to actually do that, and
Mhm.
not lose my mind in the process.
But I love doing what I do for a similar reason, obviously.
Mhm.
And yeah, of course, I want to be able to offer podcasting to my clients, either helping them to produce their own, or maybe they want to speak with me, or however that works. So
Mhm.
yeah, I did kind of see it as a natural extension because I'm like, yeah, how do I get back to the radio? Well,
Right.
this ain't radio, but it's, hey,
Damn
in
close.
some ways it's better. Yeah.
Oh,
But
yeah, that I would agree with.
But to go back to those people who kind of encourage you to stay in a lane, I feel like that was very much what had happened to me as well, happened for me, I suppose. I don't want to say to me. I had left Oneonta in, was it 1998? Yeah.
Yes.
And spent the next couple of years really struggling. I worked as a temp. I was like a secretary office administrator at the Nassau
Mhm.
County Medical Center. Because you can see me, I'm definitely a medical center kind of person. I was picking up all the secretarial skills, right? Like all of the, all the admin stuff, because at least I knew I could somewhat type and do the thing.
Mhm.
So after that, I was talking with my parents and they said, we think you'd make a really good speech pathologist. I think speech pathology would be a really good thing for me and for you. And I was wildly lost. I was wildly lost, and I knew that my boyfriend had made inroads in the amusement industry and that he was planning on moving to New Jersey.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I'm like, how do I make this work? So I applied for a speech pathology master's degree in New Jersey, Montclair State University. Fantastic program.
Yes.
Um, so I had my science grades were in the tank. I had a
Mhm.
philosophy major of all things, speech comm, sure, but that's not speech pathology,
Exactly. Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So I, I reach out to one of my college professors who says he'll write me a letter of recommendation, and I decide to go to the school myself and check it out because I have no context for any of this. I'm
Mhm.
sitting in clinic, I'm watching all these people. I'm like, this is amazing. Look at they're working with these kids, they're helping them out. I put in my application. I get accepted. I come to find out that there were probably about 100 applicants for the one seat that I was sitting in.
Wow.
And I'm like, how did I even get in this program? And they said you showed up.
Wow.
So, and the wildest part was I reached out to my college professor and I said, thank you so much for writing that letter of recommendation. He said, I never wrote it.
Oh my gosh.
So at this point, I have broken up with my boyfriend. And
I
the,
don't
the,
know that
the
I knew
thing is,
that part.
there were a
Yeah.
couple of breakups, yes,
Okay.
because that's
Okay.
just that's life, right?
That's how it goes.
Um, that's how it goes. So I'd broken
Well,
up with
yeah.
my
When you
boyfriend.
get together at that point in your life, I think
Yeah. So
the growth
for your
patterns,
audience,
yeah, move on and
I
up
I
and
did
around. Yeah.
I did end up marrying my college boyfriend, my high school sweetheart, that the same
Just
guy,
gonna say pre-college.
pre college. Yeah. So I move out to New Jersey. I am in my first class. I have no idea what is happening, and then I had a dream, and John Malkovich was there.
All right.
All right. So John Malkovich shows up in your dream. The number one rule in my life is if John Malkovich shows up in your dream, you listen. Right.
I would imagine this is true.
Yeah. So I had a dream and John Malkovich is there and he's like, what the actual fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
You should be doing your master's work in creative writing.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why you're doing this. And you have got to make this right. And you've got to make this change. And I woke up with this sense of relief and peace.
Mhm.
And like everything was exactly as it should be. And then a moment later, I said, holy fuck, I'm still in this major or in
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
program.
Right, right, right.
Failed the first semester catastrophically. The second semester, they said, you got to straighten up and fly right or else you're going to get kicked out.
That's usually a pretty good indicator that you're not on the right path too.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing too. This was really wild. So, second semester, I said, look, I'm paying for this, right? I'm going to go out on my own terms. Am I leaving the program? Yes, but I'm going to go out on my own terms. Studied my tail off. My good friend Diana, who is a wonderful speech pathologist, she has gone on to do great things, including a kick-ass Zumba instructor, but that's another story. Again, right? Like these other paths.
Twisty turvy path. Yep.
Yep. She helped me get through it, studied my ass off. And then at the very end, I had written a couple pieces from interviews of people that I had done that were very popular with the instructors. Went in that last day. They said, yes, you can stay if you want to. And I said, I am going. Goodbye. And it was actually one facilitator in particular who said, yeah, you have no business being in this program. You should leave. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, this person said I should leave. And the head of the department was so kind. She's like, we could have made this work. You would have been fantastic in clinic. If you'd just done like one class per semester, can we just make this work? And I said, I think I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
But the experience of first understanding that people around you don't have the answers that you're looking for, that just because, bless my silent generation parents who were just trying to get me in a line of work where they're like, look, we read in a paper that we're in need of speech pathologists. You can do this. We're sure you can do just about anything. And it was just a terrible fit from the start. It was a multi-$1,000 mistake that gratefully I was able to pay off, but it was a lot. And it didn't end up panning out. So we're in a funny place, this Generation X. I think about our generational differences a lot because we are living in a millennial and Gen Y world with these influences from the boomers and the silent generation that just do not serve us.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in this funny place and no one's really going to listen very much since we are such a small population base. But now we're the ones who are telling the generations after us, what knowledge are we imparting? Are we imparting what we have learned, which is that this world has changed and you need to go with it and that it's okay? Or are we sharing the antiquated knowledge of our parents that you need to go to college, you need to get the degree, you got to do the thing, you've got to look at where the openings are and go. And I think the generations after us, they know.
Yes.
They know what they've got to do. Yeah. And they know that the old information is bunk. So if you're going to continue living on this planet and being relevant, you just got to keep moving forward. And that's what all generations, the fresh generations, they know.
Yeah. Yeah. I love all of that. And I think it's so true. And yeah, it does feel like we were sold a big pile of dew every once in a while.
And I think some people knew that. And I think some people didn't. I mean, I'm not going to say that everybody's innocent in this situation.
It took me a minute to figure it out.
Yeah.
So you leave the speech pathology program. I've been in that moment of what the fuck is next? How did you what did you draw from? Like what sustained you? How did you pick yourself back up? Because I had those moments of my own and I know that they're devastating. Even when you know you're doing the right thing, there's still so many other pressures, whether it be rent or people's opinions or just an internal compass that's dragging you forward. What'd you do in that pivotal moment?
Well, I still had my job, which was good. So through the college, I've been introduced to the East Orange VA hospital. So I was working in Veterans Affairs in East Orange, New Jersey, for their audiology and speech pathology department. I was their office admin because I had those office admin, that office admin background. And I came up with this crazy plan based on a ex who I do not speak of, just for shits and grins. I don't speak of that ex. But they were going for a program at the Catherine Gibbs School for visual communication.
Okay.
Now, if you know anything about Catherine Gibbs, they were known as a secretarial school. They were also known as one of those schools that were taken down for being predatory, basically. Right. Yeah. So, but the experience I had with the Gibbs School in Montclair, New Jersey, although it may have been predatory, I had very responsible teachers who taught very well. So I picked up, it wasn't it was a professional certificate for whatever that means, but I was able to pick up, the Adobe suite. I was able to learn about 3D graphics. I was able to learn about font and design and all of the structural stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And even though, the certificate is basically worth bunk, the knowledge that I gained from that experience was really very, very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So I left the job at the VA hospital and began working for a marketing agency.
Mm-hmm.
Again, in a administrative position, moved my way up to, I believe I was a project manager or no, account associate, account executive. And then I kind of wiggled my way into traffic. I established a traffic department within that company. And what traffic basically is making sure that all the pieces as they move between the account executives and the writers and the designers, you're making sure that everything is getting checked off, everything is proceeding correctly, that all the dots are, I's are dotted and T's crossed.
Mm-hmm.
And I really threw myself into it, really enjoyed it. I love the organization of it. I love pulling together systems, all that kind of stuff. And I was beginning to get a better understanding of like branding guidelines and, the amount of research that goes behind. A lot of pharmaceutical advertising was coming out of this
Mm-hmm.
particular agency. North Jersey is a very big pharma center.
Yes, it is.
So, yeah. So I pulled myself together there and was kind of picking up things left and right, and until the point where I kind of burned out, like
Mm-hmm.
completely burned out. But I was still finishing up at Gibbs once I finished that, and I was kind of burned out at the agency. I came across an ad for customer service for a tea company and decided to make my next move.
Yes.
So,
and this is the part of your professional endeavor that really has the most day-to-day impact on my life.
And it's so funny because it's probably the shortest stint I had.
Yeah.
I sat down at my desk and my boss said to me, okay, you're at the computer now. It's an online tea company. You're going to be responsible for answering all the questions that come through on the chat and making sure that, your returns are processed, orders go through, everything's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I am not a tea expert. He said, you are now. There is a case of books behind you. You can look up whatever you need. The warehouse is that way. And can I tell you, the smell of this place was just spectacular.
I can imagine.
I mean,
I can imagine
all of the teas in these giant bins. It was just wonderful. The family that runs the company was incredibly generous. They gave me opportunities to write for blog posts. At one point, they gave me an opportunity to do some vlogging, though that didn't really work out well, but that's okay. They still gave me the opportunity. I drank every tea under the sun. I tried all of the things in the warehouse. It was just wonderful. It was a great gig, and I totally would have kept it if my husband had not gotten a job in Baltimore. And we were married. We were married at that time, and there was no way. I said, anyway, I could do customer service remotely. No. So
okay.
We packed up the house. I left the job, and we moved to Baltimore, Maryland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know what that means to you. Having missed the move, I know that that's a special love for you.
Yeah, it was, we moved to Maryland and I cried for probably about a week. I got really sick. In terms of not like deep illness, but I will say like it was like some sort of cold funk something. I was like laid out for a few days. And then I realized I had to get a job. So I started running, as you do when you don't know what to do. I realized that in Baltimore, in order to meet people, you either have to run, have children, or a dog. It's one of those three things.
Okay.
Right. So, so I started running, still didn't meet anybody. But then I saw that there was a tech company down the street within walking distance. I said, okay, I'm going to apply for a job there. And that's how I got into digital.
Okay.
That's the path, my friends. That's how it happens.
I love it. And so those transitions, those personal experiences lead you to this idea for the podcast.
Yeah.
I'm assuming a bit. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a long route, but yes, you told me I
Yeah.
could talk, so I'm just
No, I
gonna
did
rant.
tell you you could talk, and I love everything that you have talked about. I guess
Thank
what
you.
I'm curious is when you first had the idea for the podcast to talk to people about their aspirations and what has become of them
Mhm.
without spoiling your own production. what what are you learning? Is there anything that's jumping out at you so far that you'd be willing to talk about how you're seeing this show up for the people you're interviewing?
Hmm. I think that a lot of my hunches are being confirmed.
Okay.
I think a lot of my hunches are being confirmed. I think that hmm, let's see. That's been a very comforting thing too. That
Mm,
yeah. And I still have a couple of recordings. The most of the people that I've spoken to as of yet have not, of course, become DJs or in
right.
recording or any of that. Which, if everybody was, then that would be a different podcast, right?
Right,
Um,
right.
I think in terms of I love the common connection of what people are looking for in radio specifically, talking about that sense of connection, community, reaching out to people.
Mhm.
Um, I think that people are surprised when they realize, like, you kind of in their conversations, you realize that they're wrapping back around to what they did then and that they are still using those skills
Right.
in
Yes,
some way, shape,
yes.
or form and they may think it's some sort of arbitrary starting point,
Mhm.
but I have a feeling it isn't. And there's a certain level of confidence that is built in people who are willing to get behind a mic and throw their voices out into the airwaves. And, you know, I think one thing that was very surprising is one person in particular said, "Yeah, I don't think anybody was listening."
Oh, I've always felt nobody was listening.
And
Yeah, no,
I,
I never got the sense that anybody was listening to me on the radio. I was just having fun playing the music I liked.
mhm. But I have I mean, I had a couple of moments in college where I found out that yes, people were listening. I think one of my
Mhm.
favorite moments was I was in the student government, and I was talking to one of the members in the student government, and he said, "Well, what organizations are you with?" And I said, "Well, I'm with WONY." And he said, "Oh, you're on the air?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm on the air." And he asked me which personality I was, and I'm like, "Well, I'm blah blah blah." And he's like, "Oh, I know you." I
That's
guess because I
awesome.
had a morning show. I don't know. He's like, "I know you. I
Yeah.
thought you would be taller with dark hair," which cracked me up. I was like, "Oh, wow. Okay." And then every time I saw him afterwards, he kinda talked to me a little different.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm like, "This is college celebrity. Like, it's is it real? Is it not real?" I mean, it's just it's really no different than any other celebrity in terms of,
Right.
like, the reality of it. It's bunk. Um, but it's all perception. But I was like, "Oh, I guess someone is listening." And I
Oh,
have
that's
weird
hilarious.
stories of, like, things that were sent to me and people who called in, and it was people were listening. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of whether you ask them to talk back.
I never did. I didn't care.
Ah,
I remember one of my favorite stories about my show, I was on the air, I think it might have been senior year, and it was Mother's Day, like Mother's Day
Oh.
weekend, because I had a
Mhm.
weekend show, and, somebody from the town called in and
Mhm.
wanted me to play a Boys to Men song. I think it was
Oh,
like
that's
Mother, I think it was called Mother or something, I don't know. It was a Boys to Men song about loving their mom.
oh, that was totally in your wheelhouse. Boys to Men was
But it
always on your no, it wasn't.
Yeah, no, 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 no,
No.
and I was not gonna play, and so I was like, "No, this sound really doesn't really go with the vibe of my show, and, thanks for calling, but I'm not gonna play it," and she kept calling back. I
Oh,
have a feeling she was m maudlin and maybe imbibing, because
gotcha.
she kept calling back. So then I ended up playing, the Tracy Bonham song, "Mother, Mother." I don't know
Okay.
if yeah, which is not a happy, love my
Oh,
mother kind of song. It's just about how this girl, like,
yeah.
has a fight with her mom and moves out and self-destructs. So, yeah. So that woman was listening, but probably not for long because I was So anyway, that's how I cater to my listening, my,
Like,
my listening population.
you think you
I,
want something? Well, screw you.
I do it much different on the podcast. And so you can send topic and question ideas to Courtney at shineandsword.com.
Please do. Please
Yeah,
do.
please do. I guess maybe one of the last questions I wanted to ask, because the focus of this podcast is on promoting mindful well-being in everyday life.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts, either just from your own experiences or for what you're learning through your podcast interviews? What is the connection between aspirations and well-being? Do you think there is a connection between those things?
I think if you have a healthy relationship with those things, you'll be okay, right? I think that understanding that you have some sort of aspiration or goal is important. These are the things that drive us, right?
Mhm.
But I think that if you go into it without some level of flexibility, it can be it can kind of backfire.
Mhm.
There's a lot, the things we can control and the things we can't, right?
Yeah.
And think about Venn diagrams of like blind spots, and I don't know if it's the Venn but diagram, like those quadrants, like the things you know about yourself, the things you don't know about yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
the idea of putting together a podcast and putting it out into the world and having people listen to it is still, I still haven't launched that first episode.
Mhm.
So it's still a blind spot for me, whether
Right.
people are going to like it, whether people aren't going to like it, um, and how aware I am of the people in my life who may listen to it, who may not.
Mhm.
Um, so I have to have that healthy relationship between my aspiration of, and maybe get an advertiser or two. Awesome, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe I help other people produce it. But then understanding that it's going to take a bit of work to get to know these platforms, to get to know how to market them, to get to know how the editing is going to work out, or the way people like to listen to things.
Mhm.
There's a bit of work there. I can choose to do the work or not do the work. To be flexible, to say, okay, so if this doesn't work, yeah, but do I feel comfortable letting it go?
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I think aspirations are important because they do move you ahead. But if something doesn't work out, to kind of have an idea of what doesn't work out looks like to you, and to feel comfortable saying, all right, I learned my lesson. I
Mhm.
learned what I need. And what I mean by I learned my lesson was I should not have done that is not what I mean by that. But
Right.
learning the things you need to learn and moving on. And just really kind of following. I mean, for me, my gut works really well, right? Like my gut
Mhm.
health is great too, but
It's all the tea.
yeah, exactly. So, the understanding that I listen to my gut all the time. And I think after having experiences like that, the studying speech pathology
Mhm.
teaches you,
Mhm.
okay, not only do I need to listen to my gut, but if I don't, there is going to be a problem.
Right.
So, yeah, just kind of trusting my instincts. And I mean, I think that helps balance, you take aspiration, and you don't want aspiration to turn into obsession, right?
Right. Right. Yeah. No, I
Mhm.
definitely agree with that. Yeah. I think when you were just talking, one of the things that made me think of not so much launching the podcast, but just starting my business. I remember
Mhm.
one of the things, I was, it was terrifying. I always tell the story of when I started the business and I posted it, not like posted it as a post on LinkedIn, but like I updated my work experience on
Yeah.
LinkedIn to show that
Mm.
I had started a business.
Mhm.
And there's like the little default kudo thing you can do, and it's like congrats on the new job. And I just remember being like, this isn't a job. Like this is
Mm.
me. Like this is the most bold and vulnerable thing I've ever done in my entire life, to like,
Okay.
hang my shingle on myself and be like, I'm gonna make this, a vocation. But I
Mhm.
remember being really afraid of taking that step. But that fear and that vulnerability was so terrifying. And one of the things I did, and found it to be such a huge breakthrough was asked myself, what is the worst that will happen if
Mhm.
this doesn't fly?
Mhm.
And when I really sat with that, really looked that in the eye, it was, I might feel a little embarrassed
Mhm.
and I'll need to go find another job.
Yeah.
But once I was able to stare those two things blankly in the face, they weren't scary.
Yeah.
Right? It was just like, okay, like, I've been embarrassed before, I've
Yeah.
survived,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's
Yeah.
unpleasant, but
Mhm.
okay, and I'm really hireable, so finding another job won't be the worst, you know what I mean? Like, I'll find another job, like, I wasn't worried about that, like, I know I'm an employable person, and so I think, yeah, like that, to your point is, thinking about what does it not working out mean to you? And if it's something that you can get to wrapping your brain around in a way that diffuses the fear, then it's like, yeah, now there's nothing to hold you back. Just go do it.
Yeah.
Right?
And, there's a certain amount of I'll be quite honest, it was a lot easier to do with a partner. I'm not gonna lie.
100%
I
yes.
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 You know,
Because
I
my living is not dependent upon, yeah, my husband makes a good salary. We're gonna be okay if I need to take time to get this up off the ground. Yeah.
So I give a lot of credit to people who are, doing this as a single person or,
100%.
without the privileges that we both
Yeah.
have.
Well, and even
Um,
just the health insurance part of it too.
oh,
Like, I didn't have
yeah.
to really walk away from the security of benefits because
Mhm.
I was able to just hop on his insurance
And
when
these are
I
all
needed
huge
to. Yeah,
things.
yeah,
And
yep,
it
I
kills
agree.
me when I think about people who have spectacular ideas and
Right.
things that would really be able to contribute to the community, and we don't have systems in place where people can
Yeah,
step into that. Yeah, so
I
I
agree.
consider myself
Yeah.
very fortunate. But that being said, my husband was also traveling a lot, and I
Mhm.
was the sole caretaker of 2 kids where it just became I just got to a point where I said, "I can't do a 9 to 5 anymore. I
Right.
need I
Right.
need flexibility that
Mhm,
these jobs cannot provide."
mhm,
So we made a choice. We're no longer paying for childcare. I'm in
mhm,
charge of childcare. When the kids get sick, I
mhm.
am the one who covers. So there is an exchange, but again, I do want to acknowledge the amount of support that I do get in this.
Right.
I appreciate my husband being, you know, open to the fact that our lives are, could be a little different if I was working a steady 9 to 5, but I do feel far more whole living in this way.
100%. Yes, yes.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
wholeness. Like, it was kinda like when you said when you put the shingle up on LinkedIn and it says this is a job, it's not.
Mhm.
It is choosing a lifestyle, it is choosing a life.
Yeah,
It's reverse engineering the way you want to spend your days into a path, right?
yeah.
And
Yep, yep.
and we're not really taught how to do that.
No, no, and when you had mentioned at the beginning of the episode the way that COVID shaped some of those thoughts for us, and I think about the fact that I launched this business in earnest, maybe 8 or 9 months before COVID, and
Mhm.
just could never have had the foresight that our whole lives were going to change in those ways, but just what serendipitous timing for me to be
Mhm.
able to have something that really supported that shift in a way
Yeah.
that the job I had left would not.
Mhm.
It didn't. I mean, I still have colleagues that are struggling.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, it just listening to that intuition, right? And it brought me to a place that actually was perfect for the circumstances that we were collectively thrust into.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, a similar situation, digital marketing, people were turning to me and, all of a sudden they need websites, they
Yeah.
need
Yeah. Yeah.
schedules, they need Zoom calls and all of that, and
That's
it
right.
was nice I was able to bring everybody with me, which was really wild. It was that move to Ohio, and I only lost 1 client.
Oh,
Everyone was
that's
able to come
amazing.
with
Yeah.
me, so
Yeah. Yeah.
that was peak pandemic, so,
Yep.
yeah, very
Yep.
grateful, very
Yeah.
grateful.
Nope. I'm with you 100% on that.
Mhm.
Before we wrap up, do you have any specific well-being practices that you rely on that, you wanna share with us?
Well, yeah, I think a cup of hot tea has been very helpful. I drink copious amount of tea during the day. It's almost ridiculous. Having access to a warehouse kind of sets you in this place where you're like, well, now I have to have access to all the teas all the time, which is unrealistic. But I do have a very good stash of fantastic tea. Yeah, tea drinking, and I've actually been struggling a bit with keeping myself grounded and breathing through things. I think when you have a job and you're trying to balance that work life, a lot of the lines get blurred and it gets really easy to get stressed out.
Mm-hmm.
And being strangely enough, an introvert, or at least on the closer to the introvert spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
trying to find moments where I am effectively being introverted to refresh. And I'm realizing that it is not scrolling through a Facebook feed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It is not going through my Instagram. It is not doom scrolling TikTok, though TikTok entertains me to no end. I think the doom scrolling was both basically on Facebook, but whatever.
Right,
I have
right,
my
right.
opinions.
Mm-hmm.
But understanding that the downtime that I need for myself as an introvert looks more like meditation, looks more like reading, looks
Mm-hmm.
more like naps. I know that sounds crazy, but if
No,
perimenopausal fun, if you're up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you might need a half-hour nap in the middle of the day,
you
and to
may.
give it to yourself, or else the rest of your day and the rest of your work is going to look like garbage.
That's right.
That's that kind of self-care coupled with a cup of tea. It's like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's what self-care looks like. Is
Yeah.
you got to take a damn nap, take the damn nap, because you'll be
That's
better
right.
off for it. Yeah.
Love it. I think that's a perfect place to end. Everybody, if you're able, if you're driving, don't take a nap. But everybody else,
No,
settle in, take a nap.
just do it.
Yeah,
26 minutes.
that's a good time. I always tell people 20 to 30, and to have a caffeinated beverage immediately before laying down, because that amount of time is about how long it takes the caffeine to kick in. And so you don't go into REM cycle, which means you don't shoot all of the melatonin into your brain. And the caffeine will kick in just as your alarm is going off. So 20 to 30 minutes, set an alarm, have a caffeinated beverage right before you lay down, and it won't wreck the rest of your day.
Yep.
Yeah. I do a workshop on sleep. So we have to talk about naps in my sleep workshop.
Everybody go to the sleep workshop.
That's right. That's right. All right.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Amanda. This was such a wonderful conversation. I know we weren't entirely sure where it was going to go, but I personally am in love with it. I think this was great. Yeah.
And thank you so much. Thank you. This is lovely.
For being here, and we'll link to all of your stuff. So for entrepreneurial listeners, Amanda is the shit. And so all of her stuff will be in the show notes, and you'll be able to find her and hire her and work with her, and your life will be all the better for it.
Thank you.
We will be back next week with another episode. In the meantime, if you have questions or comments or topic ideas, please send them to Courtney@shineandsoar.com, or fill out the contact form on shineandsoar.com/podcast. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you're listening. And if you love this content, please share it with your people, because they might love it too. Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you again soon. Take care of yourselves and each other.